Alright, so, hello 20-1. Today I'm just going to be running through basically my version of how to break down a piece of literature or a piece of short story literature, or literature in a short story format through 6 Months, 3 Days by Charlie Jane Anders. This has been posted and given to you on Google Classroom to read over the weekend with a coming assignment. But also this method that I'm going to be breaking it down is effective too for when we start getting into the headspace for writing essays. Okay, we have to start preparing ourselves to pick pieces apart from the story, to look at characters individually, to look at setting or theme, and try to build on that, okay? So, first up, we're going to talk about the premise, okay, of the story. We have two extraordinary people that fall in love. They possess two strands of the same abnormality. Okay, and through that, we see in the opening sentence that it's a man who can see one future or one path ahead of him is dating a woman who can see many, many, many futures. Okay, and they're dating each other, and as the title alludes to, they recognize that they have a finite um, bit of time on their relationship. Okay, we'll get to that later. I believe so. Yes, we do. Okay, so both characters are characterized both directly, where the author tells the reader directly about the character, so the author might just leave some narrative in there and string us along with some information about the character. And then also indirectly, and this is more frequent, where the author shows a character in action, where the reader infers information based on what the character says or does. So we get to learn about these two characters through indirect characterization. So we see them interact with each other and we see how they behave, and we get to see who they are through that, right? We're judging them based on their actions. The conflict, okay? So, right off the top, the characters possess the ability to see paths. They know their future, that their relationship is finite, having limits or boundaries, okay? As we know, through the title, their relationship's going to last 6 months and 3 days, okay? And they know that, and they establish that right from the start. The debate or the conflict that's going on here, and this kind of revolves around theme as well, is free will versus determinism. So this debate revolves around the extent to which we have no control or whether people are able to decide for themselves whether to act or behave in a certain way. So with Doug representing determinism, which states that free will is an illusion and believes that every event and action has a cause. Doug believes that we have one path and he believes that he has one path. The only difference between us and Doug is Doug sees the path ahead of him and we have our blinders on, okay? We don't see where we're headed, Doug does, but he does not believe he has the power to change it or the power to alter where he's going. He believes his life is determined, okay? It's predetermined, it's laid out for him and he's set to live it. He's say on a train cart and he's on rails and he's just going to go around for the ride. He doesn't get to stop or change or jump or change cars or change paths. The train is laid out and he's riding it. Judy represents free will. Okay, she can see many futures and she plays around with that idea and really alters things to try to optimize her death. Okay, and she wants to die and live out her happiest and best life. And free will is the idea that we are able to have some choice in how we act and assumes that we are free to choose our behavior. In other words, we're self-determined. So rather than having something determined for us, Judy believes that we are self-determined and our actions, sure, they have consequences, but um, what happens next is up to us as we can push forward. Of course, we can't control how others react, but in Judy's case, she can see that if she takes a sandwich from someone in one form, but not from the other, in one strand, but not in the other strand, she can see how both kind of split off. So her free will is a little more educated than ours, where ours is more of a guess. So this is kind of an image that I found to represent how Judy's future works out. As we see, this is a metropolitan freeway with many paths, and sorry about that. That was my cat clawing at the door. Um, it sounded like a person. Judy has many paths in this freeway. Okay, this is Judy's life. This is a decent representation. Where she can kind of choose which path she's going to take. They all end up in different places. There are roads going every direction. There are strands and cars and different opportunities coming at every way, and she kind of gets to jump around on these paths and see which one works out the best for her. Okay, she does refer to her friend and say that she sees no other way to get to that perfect ending of her life without going through Doug, and she really wishes she didn't because her and Doug break each other's spirits. Um, and she knows this, but she has no way to kind of get to the best possible future without going through Doug. He's kind of a catalyst or a stepping stone into happiness for Judy. So Judy really has to play with this idea of going through heartache and going through hurt and torture and pain and trying to convince someone that they can do more than what they think. And except the difference is she knows that she's not going to get him there at the end. Often we hear of people who get into relationships to try to fix one another. Judy's kind of in that relationship, but she knows she doesn't fix Doug. She's convinced that she doesn't. Um, Up next, we have an image that I've chosen for Doug. Okay, there's no one else around. It's lonely. It's one path. It's a straight road. He's going from point A to point B. Little things might change. Dust might blow a certain way. It might rain, but it's at the end of the day, this is one clear path right to where he's going, and that is to death. Okay, Doug does not see options. He sees the end, and he sees every kind of step to get there. After that, Doug is limited on his foresight. He doesn't see too far ahead. Okay, and he doesn't see any turns or dips or dives in his future. He just has what it is. So, we're going to talk about how outlook changes perspective. So, this is kind of a look in at these characters, and if we were writing our essay, this is how we would kind of have one paragraph about Judy, one paragraph about Doug, and then one paragraph about how they both could have benefited, or something else to prove your thesis. But you would definitely break down the two characters. So, in order to rationalize these abilities that they have, we almost have to look at it like positivity in our head or like muscles in our body. If you're not using them, you're losing it. So for Judy, as she continues in a relationship, she kind of struggles with the ability to see more. As we know, those who work out their muscles are able to extend their body's ability, and those who do not train their bodies are not able to exceed their normal. As we'll see in the next slide, Judy and Doug develop the relationship, and Judy loses sight of her future. Negativity is triumphant here, and it causes foresight to shorten. So Doug's always telling her that every path she sees is wrong, 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 and that really she's delusional and just has one path, and she should just stick on it and then continue on that path. But she kind of wants to hold on to it, but as she's with Doug and he shuts everything else down, she then starts to kind of only see, just like us, a blinder path, one straight forward. Not just like us, but just like Doug, a blinder path straight forward. Because slowly she's stopping to use those muscles and she's stopping to progress and become a more rounded person. And it's really disrupting her ability to use her sight and to see positive futures for her. We have a point in the story where Judy knows the end's coming and she goes for a walk. So I'm going to read this and then talk about it. A few days before the breakup, Judy stands in the middle of Central Square, and a homeless guy comes up to her and asks for money. She stares at his face, which is unevenly sunburned in the shape of a wheel. She concentrates on this man, who stands there, his hand out. For a moment, she just forgets to worry about Doug for once. And just like that, she's seeing futures again. The threads are there. If she buys this homeless man some scones from 1369, they'll talk and become friends, and maybe she'll run into him once every few weeks and buy him dinner for the next several years. And in 5 years, she'll help the man, Franklin, find a place to live, and she'll chip in for the deposit. But a couple years later, it'll all have fallen apart, and he'll be back here. And she flashes on something. Franklin tells her 8 years from now, if this whole chain of events comes to pass, about a lost opportunity, and then she knows what to do. Okay, so Judy had kind of regressed in her ability to see. She had let those muscles atrophy in her body so that she couldn't see many futures. But then she goes for a walk, and as soon as she's not with Doug anymore, she kind of opens her mind up again, and she's seeing all these paths kind of coming, and she decides to go talk to a homeless guy. And she starts to see different futures again. She starts to kind of branch out and strengthen that muscle again. She talks earlier in the story that she would just open up to different countries and check the future of what would happen if she traveled to those countries, and that was the same kind of exercise activity as what's going on here. Okay. Judy also continues, as you'll see, to go against the normal path here, just to see if she has free will. And then we have the proof of Doug's lapse in perspective. As we see at the end of the story, page 16, Doug says, "Breaking my arm hurt a lot more." Doug winces. "Than I thought it would." "Your arm?" Judy can't believe what she's seeing. "You broke your arm." "You can see for yourself. At least this means it's over." "But you're supposed to break your leg." Doug almost tosses both hands in the air at the same time, both hands in the air, until he remembers he can't. "This is exactly why I can't deal with you anymore. We both agreed on our very first date I break my arm. You're just remembering it wrong, or being difficult on purpose." That's from page 16. Continuing on, we see that on page 2, 6 months, 3 days, Doug says. "Not that I've counted or anything." And it ends badly. "I break my leg." "You break your leg riding my bicycle. I like that bike. It's a noble 5-speed in the sea of fixies." "So you agree with me?" Doug has been leaning forward, staring at Judy like a psycho again. He leans back so that the amber light spilling out of the Radish Saloon's tiny lampshades turn him the same color as his beer. "You see the same future I do. Like she's passed some kind of test." So we see that in reality, on page 2, Doug agrees that it's his leg, and at the end, it's his arm that he breaks. And this is kind of a testament that Doug does have the opportunity to see other paths, or that other paths exist outside of what Doug accepts seeing. But his negative mindset makes him believe everything that happens was on that path, whether he's seen it or not, because he believes he truly has no power or no ability. This is a moment of reprieve for Judy that Doug was wrong, because it proves to her that she has many futures and maybe she hasn't even seen them all yet. Doug needs to sit with this idea some more. Perhaps Judy can convince him in the future, but it does seem like he is kind of stuck in this loop and not coming out of it. Unfortunately, we do not get to see further into the story, but we do see that even without the power to see into the future, our outlook does change what we're open to accepting and open to changing from. That's what kind of the author was hinting at, is that whether you know what's coming or not, if you have an open mind and you're willing to accept change and you're willing to accept new opportunities, then you opens up so many branches for yourself. Then if you close out those opportunities and you close out life, then life stops caring about you and life stops pushing you along. You're just free to walk down that one path like a treadmill. Okay, I think that's what the author was kind of getting at, and I'm interested to see how you guys develop your thoughts on fate, free will, determinism, and outlook. Thank you guys. I hope you have an excellent weekend / week 3 next week. Okay, thanks.